Should we be buying fake or rip-off sets from AliExpress? It's an issue that has long since been debated within the keyboard community, but there really isn't a clear answer to this question. Today I will be looking at two different sets I bought from AliExpress in an effort to help me form an opinion and maybe answer this question. I first became aware of these keycaps when I was on Reddit one day and came across a post that had Animal Crossing themed keycaps. Going down into the comments, I found that this was actually a set being sold on AliExpress. When I went to AliExpress to search for them, I soon realized that it had a wide selection of keycaps of various themes and colors. Because of the looser copyright laws in China compared to the States, they had a lot of keycaps and artisans that would not be sold in the US. For example, if a person tried to run a group buy on the Pikachu themed keycaps such as the one I bought off AliExpress, they probably would have received a cease and desist letter from Nintendo, as Nintendo is notorious for being super protective of their IP. Furthermore, the keycaps on AliExpress were much more affordable compared to GMK, CAT, or SA sets, so I thought that it'd be pretty negligible for my wallet if I received the keycaps and they turned out to be trash. Because I was ordering these keycaps from China and COVID has caused a lot of unexpected shipping delays, I was expecting that it'd be quite a while before I would receive them. I placed my order for these keycaps on January 15th and received both sets on February 3rd. The packaging for the keycaps was pretty cheap and flimsy, with the Pikachu keycaps being the worst out of the two. It had this plastic wrapped around a cheap black box that was a bit crushed when it arrived. As you can see in the video, I struggled with taking the plastic wrap off and I considered cutting it, but I managed to peel it off in the end. The keycaps come in pieces of foam with one layer of foam in the middle of the two pallets. It also comes with a switch puller, but this one is a cheap plastic one. Looking at the keycaps, they have nice color and font, but I did notice that the Y key seemed to be capitalized compared to the other keys which came in lowercase. The A key also seemed to have a light black smudge on it, which wasn't super noticeable at first, but if you look closely you can tell. I noticed that the Pikachu set had pretty small keycaps and were quite noticeable compared to my original set. They look nice overall, but you could definitely see the plate as there are more gaps in between each key. One unfortunate thing about the set is the fact that it lacks a 1.75U right shift key or any key of that size. This meant that I had to get one of the novelty keys and use it instead, but it left an even larger gap compared to the other keys and looked pretty awkward. The Animal Crossing set was also a PBT set and was quite thick. The keycaps are also bigger than the Pikachu set, which was nice. One thing of note is the fact that the profile of the keys is XDAS. When I first saw this, I thought it was a typo and they were trying to say that the keycaps were XDA profile. However, these are actually two completely different keycap profiles. Here are some pictures to show the difference. As you can see, the XDAS profile appears to be slightly taller than the XDA profile, and on the top view also appears to be more square. As a result, these keycaps should have a deeper and louder sound, which I hope I can demonstrate with this type test. Typing on these keycaps, I also got a pretty nice sound due to the thickness of the keycaps, but it definitely felt more awkward typing on these keycaps compared to the milkshake set. For some reason, I actually typed faster on these and got 135 words per minute. However, this might just be due to RNG and the fact that I might have gotten a string of words in that type test that was easier for me to type. The keycaps were more expensive than the Pikachu set and came to be around $40. At the start of the video, I asked the question about whether we should be buying the AliExpress keycaps because I've seen very mixed responses on the various forums for mechanical keyboards. Some people don't think it's a big issue, while others find it to be reprehensible and something that we should not be endorsing. So I decided to take a look at these keycaps to see why people even bought them in the first place. I consider myself to be a newer member of the community, as I had only joined towards the end of 2019. But I have seen enough where it's become quite apparent that scalping and Chinese knockoffs are big problems. While the Pikachu Set is technically an original, because no one in the keyboard community is crazy enough to infringe that blatantly on Nintendo IP, the Animal Crossing set seems to be ripping off of another set. When I originally first saw the picture, I had thought that the keycap set being shown was a picture of another set called the Infinikey PBT Islander, which is also Animal Crossing themed. But I soon realized that this was a different set. The biggest giveaway, discounting that spacebar, was the fact that the font was completely different. Ultimately, the set still sold extremely well, and blew MOQ out of the water, but just because it was a highly successful group buy doesn't mean that it makes it okay for this Chinese company to rip the design and sell it as their own. I'm well aware that by purchasing this set, I am technically contributing to the problem. However, there are a couple reasons why I went through with buying the set. One, I wanted to see what the experience was like buying off AliExpress, and two, I wanted to see the quality of the keycaps and determine whether they were worth buying, or if it was a waste of money. If the experience was bad, or the keycaps were a terrible product, I think that the issue would be much simpler because why spend all that money and time waiting for a garbage set? However, after reviewing and looking at these keycaps myself, I feel like they're actually pretty decent, and I can see why people choose to buy keycaps off of these rip-off vendors. It might sound kinda stupid or cheesy to bring up morals and ethics when talking about keycaps, but rather than thinking about these custom keycap sets as simply pieces of plastic, think of them as pieces of art. It may sound easy and trivial to stick color combos together and call it a day, but designing keycaps tends to be a more nuanced and time-consuming process than most people think. For example, the creator of the PBT Islander took caution and specific design changes to walk that fine line while designing novelties to avoid getting slammed with a lawsuit. In order to run a group buy, it requires a lot of time and effort spent not only to design the keycaps, but also work with different vendors and collaborations to ensure the group buy will be a success. However, these AliExpress sets just simply steal design and sell them for their own profit. For the Animal Crossing inspired set, they did change the font and created some keycaps that were not offered in the original group buy, but I still think that it is wrong for these Chinese companies to just take these designs and rip them off. But I also do see the appeal and why people still choose to buy them, and that's simply because official keycap sets can be very expensive. For example, if we were to buy the PBT Islander during the group buy, we would have to spend $80 for the base kit and $30 for novelties. If you happen to miss a group buy and got the set during the extra sale, it would cost you $100 for the base kit and $35 for novelties. This means that the original kit is essentially around 4 times more expensive than the rip-off kit being sold on AliExpress. A lot of the people in the hobby are fortunate enough to be able to spend money on buying keyboards, keycaps, and novelties, but there are those who are much less fortunate and cannot afford to drop hundreds of dollars on keycaps and keyboards. There's a simple retort to this argument, which essentially boils down to, don't be in the mechanical keyboard hobby if you aren't financially sound enough to do so. And while it may sound harsh, it is quite true. Ultimately, a keyboard is a luxury and not a necessity, so if you're making a decision between paying bills and buying a custom keycap set, it is more financially sound to spend that money on your bills. It does suck watching super cool group buys pass by that may never come back again, but that's just the reality of the situation. Many vendors do sell cheaper sets on their site, and some of them look pretty good. For example, one set that I got from Infinikey was the NP PBT Crown, which is also sold on KBD Fans. It is $69, which is kind of expensive if you're considering budget sets, but it includes 181 keys and a lot of novelties that you can use to customize your keyboard. If you really search around, you'll find there are plenty of cheaper sets that offer a lot of customizability. However, I will admit that most of these budget sets tend to be simpler design compared to the more premium custom design sets. I want to make it clear that I am in no way trying to gatekeep people from being in the hobby simply because they aren't financially stable. I'm not trying to condemn anyone if they do choose to buy the rip-off sets, but I think that if you do, you should at least be aware of the consequences of your actions. Financially, it is smarter for you to buy the keycaps from AliExpress, but by doing so, you're supporting a bad practice that harms the community by not supporting the designers. While it may seem that these designers are rolling in the dough with a successful group buy, oftentimes this isn't the case due to cost of production, materials, prototypes, shipping, and QC. As a result, it's not like the designer actually gets the bulk of profits, as the keycap producer takes a lion's share, and the vendors who partner up with the designer also take a cut of the profits. This means that unless a group buy is wildly successful, most designers probably don't earn all that much from a group buy itself. I don't have the specific numbers, and people don't really talk about the profit breakdown in the community, as I'm sure most people prefer to keep that information private. But gathering from what little information is out there, this seems to be the case. If we don't support these designers and we continue to give our business to these rip-off vendors, then the community might drive away those with talent and creative ideas. There really isn't a surefire method to stop these Chinese vendors from ripping off keycap designs. If you try to sue these online stores, you might manage to get the listing taken down, but it is extremely easy for them to just close the account and create a new store and start all over. If designers or vendors try to sue them for damages, it'd probably go nowhere, which is something many people have experienced before when trying to pursue copyright cases in China. We can only try to keep ourselves personally accountable to try to keep the hobby healthy and free from toxic behaviors and practices. If you're financially sound and can afford to buy the original design, I feel like you should do so and not support the rip-off sets. You might be saving money by buying these cheaper sets, but by doing so, you are hurting the community by not supporting the designers. If you don't have the money, buying the fake set off of AliExpress or Taobao would be the financially intelligent move, as you would be saving money. But do know that by doing so, you are technically contributing to the problem. I think the better solution would be to save up and look towards the future for the next set that you really want. Hopefully by the time it rolls around, you have saved enough money to join in. If there's a keycap set that you really want and you are unsure if it will ever have a rerun, I would recommend that before you buy that set off of Taobao to first try to contact the keyboard designer and see whether they'd be interested in a rerun of the set. You can find a lot of the information on IC forums on Geek Hacks or on subreddits, which should allow you to contact these designers. For the most part, it will depend on the demand and whether there's enough people who want the keycaps who didn't manage to snag them during the initial group buy. But I think it is important for the people to try to at least contact these designers and at least see if it would be possible for a round 2. If you bought a set from AliExpress without knowing that it was a rip-off set, I really can't blame you for doing so as you didn't know better. However, hopefully after you watch this video and research more about this hobby, you choose to support the designers going forward. These are just my personal thoughts about the whole issue regarding fake sets, but I don't know if there necessarily is a right or wrong answer, so I'm still kind of conflicted myself regarding the whole thing. I want to see other people's perspectives, so feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below.